living in the land of plenty, 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 with no apology. God's love is a land of plenty, and that's just where I want to be. Where I wanna be. You say the glass is half empty, looks full to me, 'cause I'm living in the land of plenty. Hey, and that's how it's gonna be. You see, it's partly cloudy, but the sun is all I see. 'Cause when you're living in the land of plenty, that's just how it be. Land of plenty, plowing in the Beulah land, planting seeds of never looking back, pulling roots with both of my hands. I worked all my life to get here. I share my bounty when I can, 'cause the love of God is a land of plenty, and it's here for every woman and man.
Danny Cox, everyone. Danny Cox. Woo! All right. Yes, indeed. Well, I want to tell you that I call living in abundance living in the land of plenty. And we were trying to think of a song to work for today, and having Danny here made it very easy. You know, he's so generous and loving. He just whipped that puppy up like nobody's business. And here we are. Thank you, Danny. Oh my gosh, that is awesome. So before we get started today, I want to make sure everyone's got a yellow slip of the 7 spiritual truths. So if you don't have one, please raise your hand and we will scurry up some ushers to take care of you. There we go. Thank you. So just keep your hand up. They'll take care of you. So, but we won't need them till a minute later. But here they are. All right, here we go. So keep your hand up. So anyway, here we are. It's week number 3. We are in the Keys to the Kingdom Prosperity series, are we not? Wow, don't you love it? How many of you, now use your other hand, how many of you have done Keys to the Kingdom before? So a couple of you have 2 hands up. That's good. So fantastic. I am so happy that Reverend Michael Peri led you the first 2 weeks, and I'm sure that you are all feeling a lot more prosperous than you were before. Isn't that true? Yes. Okay, so only in this corner. So we've got some work to do, but that's okay. We've got 4 more weeks. No problem. So we are really going to live in abundance. And one of our greatest teachers, Eric Butterworth, he says this. He says, God is my instant, constant, abundant source and supply. So really hear that. God is my instant, right here, right now, constant, always present, abundant source of supply. God's presence, God's power, God's energy, God's bounty is with us every moment of the day. And so for those of you who have said, oh, here we go with another prosperity series, I've done them before. If you have that energy, I've got good news for you. You are shortchanging yourself, and you are about to have a greater experience of abundance. So I have an idea. So if there is any part of your thinking that says, here we go again with another prosperity series, let's have a yawn and just yawn that out of us, okay? So together, are you ready? Here we go again. Now I invite you to take a deep breath in, making noise, and breathe in new prosperity. Let it fill your body with new vitality, because that's what we're about. We're going to open ourselves up to a new awareness. We're going to build a new awareness of knowing God's abundance always, all the time. How many of you live joyfully in that energy, always, all the time? So some of you, so what we want are all of us, and Susan was a little ambivalent, but she's getting there, and by the end of our series, her hands are going to be wide open. Well, you know what? I have been teaching prosperity for at least 15 years. I've taught so many programs of prosperity in Unity that I can't even keep them all straight. And when I ran out of ones that were new, I made my own up. That's what I did, because I really want to get prosperity and live in God's abundance all the time. And no matter how many times I teach prosperity, there is always room to grow. I always find myself with some old embedded thoughts about lack and limitation. Some old thoughts that hold me back from receiving God's good. And sometimes even some thoughts that call me back from giving and expressing God's good. So I really want to change that. And I found myself in a situation that showed me my ability to grow and change. So I want you to take a look at this. This is my keyboard. Now, if you look real close, you're going to see that I glued on letters because my letters wore off. And so I glued them on, and to make sure they wouldn't wear off, however, I wasn't entirely successful, I then put a top coat of fingernail polish on top of the letters to make sure they'd stick, right? Well, and then, because when you write in a password, you don't always see the letters. And because some of the letters stick, there are times I would have to write my password in 6, 8 times and take a break because I wouldn't know which letter wasn't working, and I'd have to walk away and say a prayer. And then I would come back to this lovely old keyboard and I would try again. Now, you might say, why on earth would anyone do such a thing? But in my human mind, I am aware that we are in the midst of a dump the debt process, that we are conserving our finances. And so when I was doing all of those things, I was feeling really good about it. Really good about making do. Really good about being in struggle mentality. Feeling really good about finding a creative way to make a shabby keyboard sort of work. So I was really looking at that one day, and I realized that there wasn't a lot of prosperity consciousness in that kind of feeling good. And I recognized that I didn't have to wait until we would somehow have this extra money that I thought I would be then deserving of a new keyboard here in the office. And so it came to me as a prosperous thought. You'll never believe this, that I could just buy one. And I was so excited about that thought. I was ready to do a little whoop-de-doo dance. It was like, oh my God, why didn't I ever think of that? I could buy myself one. I have enough. I can live in the land of plenty. I can do that. So that very night, Lonnie and I had a special event to go to, and there was a raffle. And guess what? Did you say what? Thank you for asking. Okay. Well, that night we had tickets for the raffle, and I won a brand new keyboard. Oh my God! I won a keyboard. I'll tell you, Lonnie had my ticket, so he went running after it, and when he came back, I said, hand it over. That's my ticket. That was my number. But he was running around doing this, like, yay, yay. And I said, hand it over. God knows who needs the keyboard. But anyway, do you get the teaching here? The teaching is when we open up to greater prosperity thinking, when we pay attention to our consciousness, we allow God's abundance to be the truth of who and what we are. Now, in truth, it wouldn't have mattered to me whether or not I went out and purchased it or whether it was gifted to me. But it was the joy of moving to a higher level of consciousness, and then the bonus joy of having the universe gift me, that made living in the land of plenty that much sweeter. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about where in your life do you find yourself challenged with thoughts that are not of God's prosperity? Where do you find yourself challenged by old behaviors that are not evident of God's prosperity? I know that I have work to do, and I'm glad to know that, because it keeps me awake and alive and to be on the lookout for where I can live more prosperously. And it was just a couple months ago, Sandy Seaton gave me this sweet bracelet for Christmas, and the words on it say, "Still I rise, still I rise." And I use this bracelet now to remind me to rise up in prosperity consciousness. I use it as a reminder to live in the land of plenty in God's fullness. And I invite you to rise as well, to build that new awareness where you live in that land. So I'm going to ask you, if you find yourself in 5 reasons that I've figured out that sometimes keep us from living in God's loving abundance. Do you sometimes think? So if you, that's you, by the way. Do you sometimes think that prosperity applies to other people and not you? That it doesn't work in your life? Do you sometimes think that? Oh, you don't have to raise your hands anymore. This is not a room of shame, okay? So don't raise your hand. Do you sometimes fall asleep and just forget to apply prosperity principles? Do you think that living prosperity and practicing prosperity can be selfish or greedy or materialistic? Or do you sometimes resist the call to be generous or more giving with your time, your talent, or your treasures? And you know it because you feel it inside, like, no, I'm not doing that. Are you sometimes afraid to live in the greatness and the goodness that is God? That sometimes receiving so much good feels uncomfortable or a little scary because so much good is not in our familiar comfort zone. These are the ways that we sometimes stay low and they keep us from rising in a new consciousness. And when I think about those ways and when I pay attention to how they hold me down in lack and limiting thoughts, how they hold me down separate from God, where I think I'm in charge of my prosperity instead of God. When I think of that, I remember Jesus, our beloved way shower. And I remember the words, I came so they might have life more abundantly. I came to show the way so that all might have life more abundantly. Think about it. When we look at the words and the teachings of Jesus, we don't see a lot of fretting. We don't see any, is there not going to be enough? We see a constant call to be one with God and to act as God and to give generously of time and love and wisdom and compassion. And we see a great being who completely trusted God as his one and only true source. I came to show the way so they might have life more abundantly. Jesus knew that God was his one true source of all good, and he allowed the divinity within him to be the presence of God in abundance to all beings. And that same divinity in Jesus lives in us. And we are called to know God this way. And we are called to express God abundantly this way. And we are called to know that God is our one true source of all good and that we are abundantly taken care of. David Owen Ritz, the author of Keys to the Kingdom, tells us this. He says, affirm the presence of God's abundance and rise up beyond the appearance of lack. Affirm the truth. God's abundance is everywhere present. When we live affirming and knowing that God's abundance lives in us and through us, everywhere present, all the time, we shift up into a higher way of being. Our awareness opens. And we are also reminded that there is a higher self. David Owen Ritz tells us this. He says, there's a higher self within us that wants to push past our limitations. It wants to live in a far greater way than we have ever known or imagined. That's the God in you. It wants to push past all of your parameters of how much good you will allow to you and from you. The God in you wants to be a living presence of abundance, because when we do that, we live in the land of plenty, which means we live in the kingdom of God, which means we are one with our source of all good, always. So, are you ready? Do you want to live that way even more fully than you have known so far? So ask yourself again, so that it's not just a knee-jerk reaction, but ask yourself from really deep in here, am I ready do I really want to live in God, completely immersed in God's abundance in all ways? If you say yes, you are saying yes to knowing the truth of who and how you are meant to live. You are meant to be abundance, and you are meant to know abundance in every way. You know, those desires we have for greater loving relationships, for wonderful health, for peace of mind, for purpose. Those desires we have to really know God more. All of the ways that we want to live and prosper are ways we want to live in God. So David Owen Ritz came up with these 7 spiritual truths to assist us in getting there. And so I'm just going to ask you to keep it. You don't need to read it, because this is your take home. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a moment now to turn within. And we will move through these truths with an affirmation, so that we might live in each of them more fully. And so I invite you now to close your eyes. I invite you to rest right in your heart. And find that place within you that is filled with the power and the very presence that is God. Know these 7 spiritual truths are the truth of who you are, and you are unfolding now into this new awareness. And you will begin to live as you have not yet lived. The first truth: God is the one and only source of our good. God is the creator and the creation, the substance and the essence of all that is. All else are channels of our good, but they are not our source. God is the one and only source of our good. I trust God as my source, and I have all I need and desire. Truth 2: abundance is a here and now reality. We all live in an abundant universe, and we are surrounded by, and we are immersed in lavish, inexhaustible abundance. I am open to the unlimited possibilities of prosperity for me in my life, right here and right now. Truth 3: abundance is inexhaustible. Creation is an ongoing activity of spirit, and God's constant flow of good is always expressing through it. When we open up to the flow of abundance in and through us, we joyfully know God more. I live in God's constant flow of abundance, and I rejoice in my good. Truth 4. God is meeting our every need in every moment according to our acceptance. We cannot separate ourselves from spiritual law, but we can and sometimes do resist, deny, or ignore it. Our acceptance is how we give and how we know that the universe is always willing to give to us in the ways that we receive and express. I practice spiritual laws of abundance, and my life is rich in all that I need and desire and more. Truth 5. Everyone deserves abundance. A universe of infinite possibility has more than enough good to go around for all beings. We will do our part in healing ourselves from any consciousness of lack or limitation, and we will act as channels of God's love and generosity. I claim my good fully as the beloved of God, and I gladly give, share, and serve others to increase abundance for all. Truth 6. Our vision is our inner awareness of our naturally abundant self. Our growing visions of an abundant life is our personal invitation to know God's greatness. We live in unique possibilities of good far beyond our knowing. My vision of good is God's invitation to give me a life filled with greatness. Truth 7. Our inner guidance will lead us to the fulfillment of our visions. We may not know how personally, but God's presence within us contains all the wisdom, all the power and intelligence needed to bring our visions forward. We must do our part and stay the course if we want to live our dreams. Divine wisdom, power, and intelligence gave me my vision, and they will lead me toward its fulfillment. I will do my part in faith and in commitment. Let us take these 7 spiritual laws and allow them to rest in our heart. For we know that when our minds and our hearts are open and willing, the commitment to live in God's abundance naturally unfolds. We see ourselves today living in a land of plenty, where God is our one true source of all good, and we get out of the way as we live in truth, a life truly filled with prosperity that answers our dreams, that lifts our hearts, that soothes our souls. Thank you, God, for this awareness. Thank you, God, for the willingness to open to a new way of being now. There is no one or no thing or no circumstance that stands in the way of our knowing the truth. God is our source of abundance, and we are one with it. So be it, and amen.